Close your eyes and let time dissolve. Long before humans dreamed of the stars, the story of life began. Small, silent, and unstoppable. From single-celled whispers in ancient oceans to the towering creatures that ruled the earth, evolution has been shaping every heartbeat, every breath, every blade of grass. It's not just history. It's the poetry of existence written in DNA. Tonight we travel through that invisible thread that connects every living thing. A calm drift through the science of change, survival, and wonder, not to excite but to soothe. So take a deep breath and let the timeline of life unfold slowly, a quiet journey across billions of years. The ocean was the first cradle of life, vast and ancient, long before continents had fully risen or skies had turned blue. The earth was a restless newborn, its surface boiling, its air toxic, its seas heavy with minerals and chemicals waiting for a spark. It was a world of silence and storms, where lightning cracked across black clouds and meteors hissed into the water. Yet in that chaotic beginning something extraordinary happened. The first flicker of life stirred in the deep. No one saw it. No one could. It was smaller than dust, invisible to the naked eye, a whisper in a world of chaos. But in that moment when molecules found order and chaos found rhythm, existence began to breathe. Perhaps it was a cluster of organic compounds floating through warm volcanic pools. Or maybe a strand of molecules assembled around a vent deep beneath the sea. However it happened, it was enough to change everything. The first cells, simple, fragile, and endlessly patient, began to divide. Each division was a miracle, a gamble that somehow succeeded. They had no brains, no bones, no purpose, yet they carried the code of persistence. These early beings, the ancestors of everything alive today, didn't plan or dream. They simply existed, replicating quietly in the dark, feeding off minerals and lightless energy, unaware that they had started a chain that would one day lead to trees, animals, and humans who could look back and wonder where it all began. In those early oceans, evolution was slow, silent, and relentless. The chemistry of survival began to write its first rules, not in words but in molecules. Those that could replicate survived. Those that could not faded away, leaving no trace. Over time, the winners grew stronger, more complex, and more efficient. The seas, once sterile and still, began to fill with invisible life, a living fog of microscopic creatures. They fed, grew, divided, and died. And through every cycle they improved. For millions upon millions of years, the ocean kept their secrets. There were no plants, no animals, no color. Only the slow heartbeat of creation repeating endlessly. Yet in that repetition something beautiful emerged. Cooperation. Some cells began to live together, finding strength in unity. Instead of competing, they shared energy and resources. This was the birth of multicellularity, the beginning of complexity, the first step toward the vast diversity of life that would one day fill the planet. Imagine the oceans then, a hazy blue world stretching from horizon to horizon, filled with invisible pioneers. They did not know that one day their descendants would walk the land, breathe air, or gaze at the stars. They only knew survival, the ancient rhythm of existence. Tiny chains of molecules worked together, building structures, membranes, and the first primitive organs. With every failure, evolution learned. With every success, it remembered, not consciously but through the quiet language of genes. The Earth's surface cooled. Volcanoes still roared, but the air began to change. The atmosphere thickened, clouds gathered, and rain fell for centuries at a time. Lightning danced across the water, feeding the oceans with energy. Life used that energy to adapt, to grow, to spread. And somewhere in the stillness, photosynthesis began. Another quiet miracle. Some cells discovered how to capture sunlight and turn it into food. With that, the world changed forever. The oceans glowed with new life. Sunlight filtered through the surface, and microscopic plants, cyanobacteria, filled the waters with oxygen. Slowly the air transformed. What had once been deadly became breathable. For the first time, the planet could sustain complex organisms. The transformation took hundreds of millions of years, but in the language of evolution, that was the blink of an eye. Oxygen was both a gift and a curse. It allowed new forms of energy to emerge, but it also brought danger. For many early life forms, oxygen was poison. Some died out. Others adapted, creating defenses, new systems to harness the power of this volatile gas. And those that adapted thrived. They became the ancestors of every creature that would ever swim, crawl, fly, or walk. In time, the seas became crowded. Evolution's imagination expanded, from simple shapes to complex designs. Some cells grew tails and learned to swim. Others formed shells to protect themselves. The dance of predator and prey began, long before eyes had formed to witness it. Each generation became slightly better, slightly faster, slightly more aware. Life was experimenting endlessly, sculpting new possibilities from the raw clay of existence. As eons passed, new ecosystems emerged. Coral-like colonies rose from the seabed, early algae spread across the shallows, and primitive animals began to pulse and wriggle in the depths. None of them had names yet. There were no humans to call them beautiful or strange, but each of them carried the same silent story: the will to live, the drive to continue, the endless experiment of evolution. The ocean had become a living universe. Its waves hid creatures of every shape, from tiny drifting plankton to soft-bodied worms that tunneled through the sand. Life was no longer confined to chemistry. It was biology now: structure, behavior, adaptation. These early organisms sensed their world through touch and chemical trails, responding to warmth, pressure, and danger. Some began to move toward the light. Others fled from it. The dance of existence grew richer, more intricate, more aware. Time passed. Unimaginable stretches of it. Continents shifted. Mountains rose and fell. Ice came and went. But life endured. Every new challenge forced adaptation. When the world froze, only the hardiest survived. When it warmed again, they spread and diversified. It was nature's eternal rhythm. Destruction and renewal. Chaos and order. Eventually, the first complex creatures appeared. Soft, jelly-like beings drifting in the seas. They had no bones, no faces, but they could sense, move, and react. For the first time, the story of life had rhythm. Not just division and growth, but behavior and purpose. These were the ancestors of all animals. From their simple bodies, evolution would sculpt endless forms: fish, insects, reptiles, mammals, and finally us. But none of that was visible yet. The ocean remained the silent stage, life's hidden womb. For billions of years it nurtured what it had created, shaping, testing, and refining. Each mutation was a tiny risk. Some led to extinction, others to innovation. A single mistake could destroy a lineage and/or give rise to something entirely new. That balance between chance and necessity became the essence of evolution. Even now, as we sit under electric lights and stare at glowing screens, the ocean still holds its memories. Every drop of seawater carries descendants of those ancient cells, living fossils that continue to thrive, unchanged in their simplicity. We owe them our existence. Every breath we take is a continuation of their legacy. Life began in water, and in many ways it never truly left. The blood that flows in our veins carries the same salts as ancient seas. Our cells still rely on the chemistry of those first organisms. Every heartbeat echoes the pulse of the ocean that first brought us to life. The memory of that beginning is written into us, not in words, but in genes, a story whispered from parent to child, cell to cell, for over 3 billion years. When we look at the ocean now, we're looking back in time. The waves that crash against the shore are older than memory, older than mountains, older than the sky. Beneath those waves lies our origin, not as humans but as life itself. The ocean is not just water. It is history, consciousness, and connection. It holds the truth that everything alive is related, threads woven into a single, endless fabric. To drift off thinking of that every fish, every leaf, every breath shares a single ancient spark, is to feel something rare: humility. The vastness of time, the fragility of life, the wonder of continuity. We are not apart from nature. We are its continuation, its latest dream. So as you breathe and let your thoughts soften, imagine the first cell dividing in the warmth of an ancient tide. Imagine billions of years passing like a gentle tide, shaping, eroding, rebuilding. Imagine the quiet persistence of life, unbroken, unstoppable. You are part of that same current, carried forward by the invisible force that began long ago in water. And as you close your eyes, perhaps the faint echo of that ancient ocean still moves inside you, a reminder that life began not with noise or light, but with a whisper beneath the waves. The ocean was the first cradle of life, vast, ancient, unhurried. Long before continents took shape or skies turned blue, Earth was a place of fire and silence. Volcanoes spat rivers of molten rock into the air. Meteors burned through the clouds, and the air was heavy with gases no creature could breathe. The surface boiled, hissed, cooled, and boiled again. Yet beneath all that chaos, the beginnings of something delicate and persistent were forming. It is strange to imagine that in this world of heat and storms, the first whisper of life appeared not as a mighty creature or a green leaf, but as something so small that even a grain of sand was a giant beside it. Somewhere in the shallows of a primordial sea, a cluster of molecules found order. They began to copy themselves. They learned through the simplest chemistry the rhythm of existence, to divide, to replicate, to endure. There was no consciousness, no intention. It was just chemistry obeying the laws of energy, water, and time. Yet from that simple repetition, from molecules aligning and splitting in perfect silence, everything we now know would one day arise. The forests, the whales, the insects, and you breathing in the dark, all share that same original spark. In those early seas, nothing yet swam. There were no eyes to see, no fins to slice through the water, but there was movement, slow, microscopic, unending. Tiny clusters of organic material gathered near volcanic vents where heat and minerals rose from the seafloor. These vents became nature's laboratories, warm places of creation where water met fire and energy met possibility. Out of that meeting, the first living cells took shape, fragile but determined. They lived without light. They fed on the raw energy of the earth itself, drawing strength from sulfur and iron instead of sunlight. They floated, divided, and drifted, endlessly patient. In their simplicity, they had already achieved something astonishing. They could make copies of themselves. With every copy came a chance for change. A tiny mistake in the pattern, and sometimes that mistake made them stronger. Evolution had begun. Time in those days meant something different. What we would call 1,000,000 years might pass like a quiet breath in the great expanse of geological time. The earth was still young, its crust shifting, its oceans churning with energy. Lightning flickered constantly across the sky, striking the sea and feeding it with bursts of electricity. Each flash was a reminder that chaos and creation were intertwined. Within the dark waters, life began to learn. Some cells developed membranes to protect their fragile chemistry. Others found ways to capture energy more efficiently. A few began to form tiny internal systems, primitive versions of what would one day become organs. The slow, invisible march toward complexity had begun. Imagine that ancient ocean, not the blue of our modern world, but a murky, mineral-rich expanse stretching endlessly under a dim, copper-colored sky. Every droplet of water held billions of microscopic beings. They floated like dust motes in light, colliding, exchanging molecules, learning through accident and persistence. None of them knew they were building the foundation for all future life. They simply continued because continuation was what they did best. Over hundreds of millions of years, these early cells grew more sophisticated. Some learned to work together. Instead of living alone, they began to form colonies, groups of cells that shared food, energy, and protection. This cooperation was revolutionary. In unity, life found strength. In connection, it found possibility. From this quiet collaboration came multicellular life, the first step toward the diversity that would one day fill the world with color and sound. The next great leap came with light. Somewhere in the ocean's shallows, a few lucky cells discovered how to capture sunlight and turn it into food. Photosynthesis had arrived, and with it oxygen. The air began to change. What had once been toxic to most forms of life slowly became the key to energy and growth. The sky, once thick with carbon and methane, began to clear. Blue light reached the surface of the sea for the first time. It must have been a subtle transformation. No grand explosion, no instant shift. Just the slow buildup of oxygen in the air, molecule by molecule over billions of breaths of ancient water. Many early creatures perished, unable to survive the new atmosphere, but others adapted, evolving defenses, then dependence. Oxygen became power, and those who could use it thrived. In the light of that new sky, the ocean bloomed. Cyanobacteria painted the seas with green and blue pigments, forming mats that spread for miles. These tiny architects built the planet's first ecosystems. They created the balance that would allow larger, more complex beings to appear. Life continued to experiment. Some organisms grew larger. Others developed specialized parts. They began to move in deliberate ways, sensing warmth, pressure, and light. The first primitive nervous systems appeared, faint electrical whispers within tiny bodies. Awareness in its most basic form had entered the world. The ocean became a living symphony of motion. Small, soft-bodied creatures pulsed through the water. Worm-like beings wriggled through the mud, leaving trails that hardened into fossils. The first written records of movement. Each one told a story of adaptation, of curiosity, of survival. As the seas grew richer, predators and prey appeared. Nature had discovered the balance of tension. Some organisms learned to chase, others learned to hide. Evolution accelerated. Creatures developed shells, spines, and fins. The dance of life became faster, more dangerous, more beautiful. If you could have stood on the shore of that world, though there was hardly land to stand upon, you would have seen nothing on the surface but endless waves. Yet beneath them was an explosion of innovation. Every niche, every shadow, every pocket of warmth became home to something new. Some creatures filtered nutrients from the water. Others devoured their neighbors. Life had learned both creation and destruction, two forces that would forever shape the living world. The seas echoed with silent struggles. Creatures drifted, collided, consumed, and multiplied. They were tiny, most no larger than a grain of sand. Yet they carried within them the seeds of every future form. In one, the beginnings of a spine. In another, the first hint of eyes. Nature was sculpting complexity molecule by molecule, generation by generation, guided by no hand, no mind, only by the quiet logic of survival. And then, in a span of time still incomprehensible to us, the ocean became crowded with life. The Cambrian explosion. A burst of creativity that filled the seas with creatures of every imaginable shape and design. Trilobites crawled along the seafloor with armored bodies and faceted eyes. Strange jelly-like predators floated in the dark, their tentacles glowing faintly with light. Worms burrowed. Fish-like forms darted, and coral-like colonies began to build structures that would one day become reefs. It was the dawn of animal diversity, and the ocean had become a garden of motion. Every creature played a part, feeding and being fed upon, testing the limits of form and function. Evolution was not a race but a dance, endless, fluid, full of failure and wonder. Still, life remained bound to the sea. Water was safety, stability, nourishment. To leave it was unthinkable. But nature, as always, was restless. Some creatures began to explore the edges, shallow lagoons, tidal pools, muddy shores. They developed stronger limbs to push through the thick sludge, lungs to gulp air, eyes that could focus in sunlight. Slowly, life began to dream of land. But that moment was still far away. For now the ocean held everything. It was the world's heart, its memory, its teacher. The tides whispered lessons of patience and change. The waves carried the stories of creation, endlessly rewritten in the language of DNA. Every living thing carried those lessons forward. Even as evolution continued to craft new forms, the ocean's fingerprints remained. In every human heartbeat, in every drop of blood, there is the chemistry of seawater. Our cells still echo the rhythms of tides. We are walking remnants of that first ocean life, carrying its salt, its structure, its unbroken chain of inheritance. Billions of years have passed since those first cells drifted in the deep. Continents have shifted, mountains have risen and fallen, species have come and gone, yet the essence of life and the will to continue, to adapt, to reach, remains unchanged. From bacteria to whales, from moss to humans, it is the same story unfolding in countless variations. When you stand beside the sea today, you are standing before your oldest ancestor. The sound of the waves is the voice of your own beginning. The smell of salt and water is the scent of the world that made you. Each wave that breaks carries within it traces of the same elements that once formed the first living cell. The story of evolution is not one of perfection, but of persistence. It is about trying, failing, adapting, and trying again. It is about life's refusal to stop. Even in moments of mass extinction, when nearly everything vanished, something always survived. Some small spark remained, hidden in a pool, a cave, or a droplet of ocean water waiting for the world to calm. When it did, that spark reignited and the great experiment continued. The ocean, in its endless patience, has seen it all. The birth of continents, the rise and fall of empires, the appearance of creatures that could finally look back and wonder where they came from. We are the ocean, remembering itself. Every cell in our body hums with the same chemistry that once shimmered in those ancient tides. Close your eyes and imagine it. The slow pulse of early earth, the hiss of steam, the deep breath of the sea. Imagine the first fragile cell floating through the dark, unaware that it is beginning something eternal. Imagine billions of years unfolding like waves, each one carrying life a little further toward awareness. Imagine that same current still flowing through you now, because it is. You are not apart from that ocean story. You are its latest verse, written in skin and breath, in heartbeat and thought. The evolution that began in water continues in you, as quietly and beautifully as it did in those first ripples of time. And as you drift toward sleep, remember, the sea inside you still remembers. Every heartbeat is a tide, every breath a wave. The journey of life did not end with the first creatures that crawled from the sea. It continues in you, a ripple from that first living spark that began long ago beneath the ancient waves. Evolution never stops. It never sleeps, never pauses, never takes a breath. It hums quietly beneath the surface of everything that lives, in the soil, in the air, in the bloodstream of every creature. The machinery of change turns endlessly. Most of the time we cannot see it. It moves too slowly, working in generations instead of days, in centuries instead of seasons. But it is there, shaping life even now. as faithfully and invisibly as it did billions of years ago when the first cell divided in the ocean's dark cradle. Every living thing is a temporary form, a moment in motion. No species is permanent. No shape or instinct or behavior is fixed forever. Every feather, every tooth, every heartbeat is a product of change and will one day change again. Even now, as we go about our lives, evolution is rewriting the story of life. It is in the bacteria that learn to survive medicine meant to kill them, in the animals that reshape their instincts to survive the modern world, and even in the quiet code inside our own cells and the slow, continuous whisper of adaptation. In laboratories around the world, scientists watch evolution happen in real time. They grow bacteria in glass tubes, feed them, expose them to new environments, and wait. Within days, those microorganisms adapt. They evolve faster than any other life form on Earth, changing to resist new chemicals, new challenges. One small mutation can make the difference between extinction and endurance. A single letter in the genetic code shifts and an entire species gains the power to live where none could before. That is the nature of evolution. Not sudden miracles, but small patient victories accumulated over time. Bacteria in hospitals, once easily defeated by antibiotics, now stand defiant. In the microscopic world, survival is an arms race. Humanity invents new weapons and life invents new shields. What seems simple, a pill, a cure, becomes complex when faced with nature's oldest instinct, to survive. But it isn't only in the microscopic that evolution continues its quiet work. Look to the cities. Look to the wild spaces that have changed because of us. In the cracks of pavement, in the branches of trees surrounded by skyscrapers, animals have begun to adapt to human presence. Pigeons with darker feathers thrive in polluted air, their bodies better equipped to handle toxins. Mice in subway tunnels have evolved separate diets from their above-ground cousins, digesting processed human food as easily as seeds. In London, biologists discovered mosquitoes that had changed so much while living underground in the subway system that they could no longer breed with the ones above ground. In a single century, a blink in evolutionary time, the city created a new kind of insect. Life adjusted quietly and efficiently as it always has. Even the wild has reshaped itself in response to us. Foxes have learned to navigate traffic lights, pausing at red before crossing. Birds have adjusted their songs to be heard above the noise of engines, raising their pitch to cut through the urban roar. Evolution is not just about bones or shapes or genes. It is about behavior too. Every adaptation, every learned instinct becomes another strand in the long weave of survival. And we, too, are not exempt from it. Humans often imagine themselves as separate from evolution, as if we have stepped outside its reach. But our bodies and genes are still part of that same endless experiment. Inside each of us, tiny mutations appear with every generation, most meaningless, some beneficial, a few harmful. These mutations become part of our inheritance, passed from parent to child, shaping our immune systems, our resistance to disease, even our ability to digest certain foods. In Northern Europe, for example, humans evolved the ability to drink milk long into adulthood, a rare trait in the animal kingdom. Elsewhere, people adapted to high altitudes, surviving on less oxygen where others would faint. In some regions, darker skin evolved to protect against harsh sunlight. In others, lighter tones developed to capture more vitamin D. Each adaptation tells a story, a long conversation between life and its surroundings. Evolution is the ultimate listener. It pays attention to everything: heat, cold, hunger, noise, scarcity, abundance. Wherever there is pressure, life responds. Sometimes it changes slowly over thousands of generations. Other times, when the pressure is intense, evolution speeds up. We see it in the shrinking size of fish populations, where overfishing favors smaller, faster breeding individuals. We see it in plants growing in city parks, adjusting their flowering times to match the rhythms of artificial light. In a quiet field somewhere, a moth lands on a tree trunk. 2 centuries ago it would have been pale, blending into the lichen-covered bark. But the Industrial Revolution covered the trees with soot, and suddenly the pale moths were visible, easy prey for birds. The darker ones survived and reproduced until nearly the entire population changed color. When the air later cleared, the pale moths returned. In that cycle of pollution and recovery, we watched evolution happen. Not in fossils or bones, but in a single lifetime. Every shift, every adaptation, is a reminder that life is not static. It never has been. The same forces that shaped dinosaurs and whales are shaping the world around us now. We just rarely notice because we measure time in heartbeats, not in generations. But evolution's clock ticks on a different scale. It doesn't hurry. It doesn't stop. Some changes we will never see. Deep beneath the ocean floor, bacteria evolve in darkness, adapting to pressures that would crush any other life. In the Arctic, as the ice melts and reforms, tiny organisms adjust to the rhythm of freezing and thawing year after year. In the forests, fungi form new partnerships with trees, learning to exchange nutrients more efficiently. Every living system is alive with motion, with change, with the quiet pulse of adaptation. Even extinction is part of the process. For life to continue, some must end. When a species disappears, it leaves room for another to emerge, another experiment to begin. The dinosaurs once ruled the world, but their fall made space for mammals, well, for us. Evolution does not mourn or celebrate. It simply continues, exploring new paths, filling new spaces, testing new possibilities. The story of life is not a straight line, but a tree, branching endlessly. Some branches flourish, others wither and die. Sometimes they reconnect in unexpected ways, creating hybrids or new forms that no one could have predicted. Each mutation, each change, each adaptation adds a new leaf to that tree. And as it grows, the roots reach deeper into time, connecting everything that has ever lived to everything that ever will. Right now, as you breathe, evolution is still writing. In your body, cells divide. Tiny errors appear in DNA. Most are repaired. A few remain. Some of those errors may one day become the seeds of change, though you'll never feel them. Evolution is slow, but it is never still. It hides in the ordinary, in the invisible, in the spaces between generations. Perhaps that is its greatest secret, that life is never finished. There is no final form, no ultimate perfection. Every creature alive is still a work in progress, shaped by the pressures of its world. A cheetah's speed, a dolphin's sonar, a bird's song. All of them are answers to questions the environment has asked for millions of years. As those questions change, so will the answers. And the questions are changing faster than ever. The planet is warming, forests vanish, cities expand, oceans acidify. Life, as always, must adjust. Already, scientists have found corals that can survive in warmer water, plants that can resist drought, and insects that thrive in conditions that would once have killed them. Evolution is responding in real time to our age of transformation, finding ways to keep the great experiment alive. There is something both humbling and comforting in that thought. Even when everything seems fragile, when extinction looms, life finds a way forward. Not always the same life, not always familiar, but always something. The planet has endured cataclysms before, ice ages, asteroid impacts, volcanic winters, and each time life began again, different but alive. We are part of that same resilience. The human body is a library of adaptations written across eons. Our eyes still carry the structure of the ocean creatures that once sensed light underwater. Our hands echo the fins of ancient fish. Our spine, our lungs, our very heartbeat, all are borrowed from forms that came before. Evolution is not just history. It is memory, built into every breath we take, Even our minds are shaped by it. The instincts that make us seek comfort, connection, and safety are old. Older than words, older than civilization. They were forged when survival meant listening to the dark, sensing danger, finding warmth. The emotions we call love, fear, curiosity, they are not accidents. They are tools evolution gave us to stay alive, to build communities, to protect one another. We are walking collections of successful strategies honed by time and struggle. And yet, evolution is not finished with us. Technology changes how we live, and in doing so, it changes what traits are valuable. In the coming centuries, our descendants may have different bodies, different minds, adapted not to forests or deserts but to the digital landscapes we now create. Some will adapt naturally. Others may guide their evolution with science. But one truth will remain: change never ends. Even as stars fade and oceans shift, the principle that drives life will continue, the endless search for balance between what exists and what is needed to survive. In the quiet of night, beneath the noise of cities and the hum of machines, that search goes on. It moves in the cells of insects, in the blood of whales, in the roots of trees pushing through the earth. It moves in you. So when you close your eyes, remember that you are part of something still unfolding. The world is changing, and so are you. The same force that shaped wings, eyes, and the first spark of thought is still at work within every living thing. Evolution never stops. It is the breath beneath all breathing, the motion beneath all stillness, the story that never ends. And somewhere, in a drop of water, a cell divides. In that single act, quiet, ordinary, eternal, the universe remembers how to begin again. Every human shares DNA with all life. It's a truth so vast and humbling that most of us can't feel its full weight. From mushrooms to whales, from trees to tigers, from the smallest bacteria to the most complex mammal, we all carry fragments of the same molecular story. A story written not in ink or stone, but in the alphabet of existence itself, A, T, G, and C, the 4 letters of DNA that spell out the code of life. Those letters connect us all across time, across species, across every difference we think separates us. It began long before we were human, long before mammals or fish or even the first plant unfurled its green leaves toward the light. Billions of years ago, in the deep oceans of a restless earth, the first strands of genetic material began to form. They were simple, fragile, and endlessly curious. They didn't know they were creating continuity, the bridge between past and future. All they knew in their own wordless way was to copy themselves, to survive, to persist. In every copy there was a chance for error, and in every error a chance for improvement. From those earliest strands came the molecule that changed everything: DNA. It was a structure so perfectly balanced, so elegantly self-replicating that once it appeared, it never needed to be reinvented. Every living thing that followed, every creature that ever breathed, crawled, swam, or grew toward the sun, inherited it. Through endless generations it became the common thread that binds us all, a single symphony played through infinite variations. Your DNA is not new. It is ancient beyond imagination. It has traveled through uncountable lives, carried by beings that lived and died long before the first human dreamt of the stars. Within you are the echoes of single-celled organisms, of trilobites and ferns, of fish that grew legs, of primates who learned to stand upright and speak. You are not simply descended from them. You are them in molecular form. Their code lives in your cells, whispered through time. If you could look at your DNA, really look, you would see more than just a ladder of chemicals. You would see history itself. You would see the marks of ancient viruses that invaded your ancestors' cells and left their signatures behind. You would see genes shared with fruit flies, with yeast, with the grass outside your window. You would see that life is not a collection of separate stories, but a single continuous one, written in the same language from beginning to now. It is an astonishing thought. Humans share nearly 60% of their genes with a banana, about 85% with a mouse, 90% with a cat, 98.8% with a chimpanzee. Those numbers aren't coincidences. They are proof of connection. The same code that instructs a tree to grow roots also helps you grow blood vessels. The same molecular rhythm that shapes a bird's wing also shaped your hands. The differences are in degree, not design. Evolution didn't rewrite the story. It merely added verses, edited chapters, rearranged sentences over billions of years. Every creature is a remix of what came before. When you watch a butterfly spread its wings, you're looking at ancient genetic mechanisms. The same kind of biological switches that once sculpted the fins of fish and the petals of flowers. When you feel your heart beating, you're hearing the pulse of an organ that first evolved in fish, then in reptiles, then in mammals, changing shape and strength, but never its purpose. Every feature of your body is a mosaic of borrowed ideas, refined through trial, error, and time. Even the things that seem uniquely human, our thoughts, our emotions, our creativity, have roots older than our species. The brain that writes poetry, loves music, and contemplates the universe evolved from the same neural networks that once guided a reptile through the forest. The chemistry of love and grief runs through all creatures that nurture their young, through elephants that mourn, wolves that bond, whales that sing to each other across oceans. Emotion itself is a shared inheritance, carried in hormones and neurons that trace their ancestry to the dawn of nervous systems. DNA doesn't just connect us to animals. It binds us to the plants that feed us and the fungi that break down the dead to nourish the soil. It binds us to bacteria, without which our bodies couldn't digest food or fight disease. In every cell of your body, mitochondria, ancient bacteria that took up residence inside larger cells, still power you with the energy of life. You are not one organism. You are a collection of many, living together in balance. Your body is a civilization of shared ancestry. The air you breathe carries pollen and spores, microscopic travelers that share portions of your genetic alphabet. The oxygen filling your lungs was made by cyanobacteria billions of years ago. Organisms that shape the very atmosphere that allows you to exist. Each breath is a reminder that life's continuity is not abstract. It is physical, immediate, flowing through you in every moment. When you eat a meal, you're not just consuming calories. You're participating in an ancient exchange of energy and code. The grains, the fruits, the vegetables, they are your relatives, distant cousins in the family of life. Their cells read the same genetic instructions, their proteins built from the same 20 amino acids as yours. The difference between you and an apple is not the material but the arrangement, the story told by the code. Even death cannot break this connection. When you return to the earth, your body becomes part of the same cycle, feeding the microbes, plants, and animals that follow. Your atoms are recycled, your molecules reused, your DNA broken down and repurposed. In time, the matter that once made you may become part of a tree, a bird, a blade of grass. Life does not end. It transforms. That is the promise of shared DNA, continuity through change. Scientists have traced the family tree of life back through millions of branches to a single root, the last universal common ancestor. A tiny organism that lived more than 3 billion years ago. It was not grand or powerful. It was a simple, single-celled being, perhaps living near a hydrothermal vent, perhaps drifting in a warm, shallow sea. But it carried within it the first version of the genetic code we all use today. From that humble beginning came every living thing that has ever existed. The human genome, the DNA of whales, the code inside the leaves of trees. All can be traced back to that one spark. It's easy to forget this when we look at the world and see difference. Fur and feathers, scales and skin, roots and wings. But underneath it all, the same molecular patterns repeat. The same double helix spins silently in every living cell, whether it belongs to a mushroom in the forest or to the hand that plucks it. In the deepest sense, there is no separation between us and the world we live in. We are made of the same story. Sometimes when people talk about evolution, they imagine a ladder, one species climbing to another, the primitive giving way to the advanced. But that image is wrong. Life is not a ladder. It's a vast web, woven from countless threads that connect in all directions. We are not at the top. We are a single strand among billions, woven together with the rest. The DNA we share with all living things is the web's fiber, binding the smallest microbe to the largest whale. That connection carries a lesson, one that our ancestors might have felt long before science explained it. When ancient people looked at the world, they often saw spirit in everything. The wind, the animals, the rivers, the trees. They sensed unity. They couldn't see DNA, but they felt its truth, that all life moves together, born from the same earth, fed by the same sun. Modern science has simply confirmed what intuition once whispered, that we are not apart from nature, but part of it in every possible way. In your body, there are about 30 trillion human cells and even more microbial ones, tiny companions that help you live. They digest food, protect your skin, balance your systems. Most of them are harmless. Many are helpful. Their genes intermingle with yours in a constant exchange, a microscopic conversation that keeps you alive. Without them, you would not survive. They are not foreign invaders. They are relatives, collaborators in the ongoing story of life. Your DNA, like every organism's, is not perfect. It carries scars, errors, echoes of battles long won and lost. Within your genome are sequences that no longer function, fossils written in code. Some come from viruses that infected your ancestors millions of years ago. Others are remnants of ancient genes that once served a purpose but have since fallen silent. Yet they remain, preserved by the same process that preserves everything useful. Memory through mutation. They remind us that evolution doesn't erase its past. It builds upon it layer after layer. If you could listen closely to your cells, you might hear the faint murmur of this inheritance, the conversations between old and new, between what was once necessary and what has become obsolete. You might hear the rhythm of time itself, encoded in every division, every replication. It's a language written in chemistry but translated into life. Consider for a moment that the same basic instructions that tell a sunflower when to bloom also guide a human embryo as it grows, that the gene responsible for building a fruit fly's wing has a counterpart in the genes that shape a human arm. Evolution doesn't reinvent. It recycles, repurposes, refines. It takes what works and uses it again in new combinations. That is why the world feels unified even in its diversity, because at its heart everything living is built from the same toolkit. The more scientists learn, the clearer this truth becomes. The discovery of DNA did not just explain heredity. It revealed kinship. It showed that all life is one continuous fabric, endlessly varied but fundamentally the same. The thread of DNA winds through every being, binding the world into a single breathing organism. When you stand in a forest or beside the sea, you are surrounded by your relatives, not metaphorically but literally. You share ancestry with the trees that filter the air, with the birds that glide above you, with the waves themselves, whose foam teems with microscopic life carrying the same code. Perhaps that is why nature feels familiar, even when it is wild. When you walk through the woods, when you hear rain, when you watch animals move, some deep part of you recognizes the pattern, because it is your pattern too. Your DNA has been part of forests, part of rivers, part of countless other beings. You are not visiting nature. You are returning home to it. Every heartbeat, every breath, every moment of awareness is the continuation of a story, that began billions of years ago in a molecule that learned to copy itself. You are that molecule, still alive, still changing. The DNA in your body has never truly died. It is only transformed, passed from form to form, carrying memory forward. When you look in the mirror, you are seeing not just yourself, but the sum of all life that came before. And when your time ends, the story will not stop. The code will continue, rewritten again through your children, through the world that receives you. It will find new combinations, new expressions, new ways to live. That is the miracle of shared DNA. It never belongs to one being alone. It belongs to life itself. So close your eyes and imagine that great web stretching through time. From the first single-celled creature to you, breathing now. Imagine every leaf, every animal, every whisper of existence connected by invisible threads of code. Imagine that you are not standing apart from the world but within it, made of the same light, the same molecules, the same dream of survival. Because you are. You always have been. The DNA that built you is ancient, eternal, and shared. And even as the world changes, even as species rise and fall, that same pattern continues. A single story, told again and again, through the endless chorus of life. The eye evolved more than once. Nature, in all its vast patience and curiosity, conducted the same experiment across millions of years and billions of lives again and again. From the simplest light-sensitive cells to the intricate camera-like eyes of eagles and octopuses, evolution found new ways to see the world. Each version was a masterpiece of adaptation, crafted not by design, but by endless trial and quiet persistence. Long before eyes existed, there was only darkness and a world without perception, where life drifted blind through ancient seas. Early organisms could not see. They could only sense. They felt warmth and cold, pressure and vibration, the pull of the current, the rhythm of day and night. Yet even in that sightless world, the seed of vision already existed, the capacity to detect light. Somewhere, billions of years ago, a single cell developed a pigment that reacted to photons, those tiny messengers from the sun. It could tell the difference between light and shadow, between day and night, and that tiny difference changed everything. Imagine that first spark of awareness, a microscopic being, floating in the ocean, sensing that the world was brighter in one direction and darker in another. That faint perception allowed it to move toward the light, where food, photosynthetic bacteria, energy-rich organisms, was more abundant. It was not seeing in the way we understand, but it was a beginning, a shift from unknowing to knowing. A cell that could detect light survived just a little better than one that couldn't. And in the quiet arithmetic of evolution, a little better is enough to shape the future of life. Over time, those light-sensitive cells multiplied and became more refined. They formed patches on the surface of simple creatures, flatworms, mollusks, early aquatic animals. Each generation brought slight variations. Some patches curved, some deepened, some gained clearer focus. A concave patch could detect the direction of light more precisely, offering an advantage in hunting or hiding. Gradually the patch folded inward, forming a cup, then a pit, and eventually something resembling a primitive eye. No sudden miracle, no divine blueprint, just patient, cumulative change over countless generations. It's astonishing to realize that the same basic problem, how to detect light, was solved independently many times. Eyes didn't evolve once and spread to all species. They evolved dozens of times in separate lineages, each one inventing vision anew. The compound eyes of insects, the camera-like eyes of mammals, the mirror eyes of scallops, the complex image processing systems of octopuses, all different answers to the same question. Evolution, it seems, loves to rediscover the beauty of sight. The octopus eye is one of nature's most remarkable creations. Built completely separately from our own, it is almost identical in structure. A lens, an iris, a retina, all working together to focus light and form images. Yet, unlike human eyes, octopus eyes evolved along a different genetic and anatomical path. Their retina faces the light directly, with no blind spot, and a feature our own eyes lack. The octopus and the human share no common ancestor with an eye like this. Nature simply arrived at the same solution twice, guided not by intention, but by the quiet mathematics of advantage. Insects followed another route altogether. Their compound eyes are mosaics of thousands of tiny units called ommatidia, each one a miniature lens. They don't see a single picture as we do, but a vast flickering mosaic, perfect for detecting motion, for sensing danger, for navigating with precision through air. A dragonfly's eye contains over 30,000 of these facets, each tuned to capture a different sliver of the world. Through them, the dragonfly sees patterns of ultraviolet light invisible to us, perceives motion with impossible speed, and hunts in mid-flight with deadly accuracy. Fish, living in a world where light bends and scatters through water, developed eyes that compensate for refraction, shaping lenses that bring clarity beneath the surface. Birds, soaring in sunlight, evolved eyes capable of astonishing sharpness. An eagle can see a rabbit from miles away. Some birds see colors beyond our imagination, perceiving ultraviolet shades that paint the world in hues we can't even name. Each adaptation is a reflection of the environment, an answer to a specific need. There is poetry in the way evolution sculpts these organs of perception. It does not build eyes all at once. It tinkers. It modifies what already exists. Skin cells that react to light become photoreceptors. Tissues fold into chambers. Transparent layers become lenses. It's like a sculptor who never starts with marble, only reshapes what was left behind. From patch to pit to image-forming eye, the journey took hundreds of millions of years. Yet every step offered some reward. A clearer sense of danger, a sharper glimpse of prey, a more accurate awareness of the world. It's tempting to think of vision as inevitable, but it isn't. Many life forms thrive without it. Deep in the ocean, where sunlight never reaches, creatures have no eyes at all. Some evolved bioluminescence instead, producing their own light in the eternal dark. Others navigate through touch, vibration, and scent, living rich sensory lives that have nothing to do with sight. Evolution isn't striving toward a goal. It simply explores possibilities. Where light matters, eyes appear. Where darkness reigns, they fade away. In caves, we see this reversal written in the bodies of blind fish and salamanders. Generations spent in total darkness made vision useless, and slowly, their eyes withered. Yet even there, remnants of sight remain, the molecular machinery of vision still encoded in their DNA, waiting like a forgotten tool. Evolution never truly erases. It repurposes, hides, transforms. In every eye that ever opened, there is a story of danger and survival, of discovery and adaptation. For the trilobites that ruled the ancient seas, eyes were armor and guidance, a way to sense predators and prey. Their fossilized lenses, made of crystal, are still visible today, the earliest evidence of vision preserved in stone. For early vertebrates, eyes became windows to a world of movement and color, driving the rise of complex brains. To see is to interpret, to understand, to anticipate. Vision didn't just change how creatures perceive the world. It changed how they behaved within it. Once sight appeared, everything accelerated. Eyes allowed animals to navigate with precision, to hunt, to escape, to communicate. The predators grew sharper. The prey grew swifter. Vision became a force of evolution itself, shaping bodies, instincts, and ecosystems. Coral reefs blazed with color, not by accident, but because color mattered to eyes. Flowers bloomed in radiant hues to attract pollinators that could see them. Even beauty, that elusive, subjective thing, emerged from the physics of light and the biology of perception. And still nature kept experimenting. Some creatures see only in black and white. Others perceive the full spectrum of ultraviolet and infrared. Snakes sense the heat of their prey through specialized pits, a kind of thermal vision. Mantis shrimp possess perhaps the most complex eyes on Earth, capable of detecting polarized light in over a dozen color channels. A visual experience so rich we can't even imagine it. What they see might be beyond human comprehension, a universe of color and motion invisible to us. Even plants, though they lack eyes, respond to light. They turn toward it, grow in its direction, open their leaves and flowers to its warmth. Within their cells are light-sensitive proteins that function like primitive eyes, detecting brightness and wavelength. Vision, in a sense, permeates life itself, not as a conscious act but as an ancient relationship with the sun. Humans are just one branch of this vast visual lineage. Our eyes, so expressive and familiar, are both fragile and extraordinary. Two small spheres of fluid and tissue, translating waves of light into thought and emotion. We see faces and skies, memories and dreams. The light that enters our eyes today may have traveled millions of years from a distant star, only to end its journey in the back of our retina, a flash of cosmic history interpreted as sight. When you close your eyes, the world vanishes. When you open them, it returns, vivid and alive. It feels like magic, but it is chemistry, physics, evolution, the legacy of billions of years of experimentation. Within your eyes are photoreceptor cells, rods that sense light and darkness, cones that perceive color. They are tiny biological marvels, connected to neural pathways that transform photons into meaning. A cascade of electrochemical reactions translates the language of the universe, light, into the language of the mind. Yet our eyes are imperfect. The retina is wired backward, forcing light to pass through layers of cells before reaching the photoreceptors. The blind spot exists because the optic nerve cuts through the retina. These flaws are remnants of the path evolution took, compromises made in the process of adaptation. Nature builds with what it has, not what it would choose. And still, despite those imperfections, our eyes give us vision so precise it can distinguish millions of colors, detect a candle's glow miles away in the dark, and capture fleeting expressions that reveal entire stories. Consider how much of human culture depends on sight. We paint, we read, we watch the stars, we fall in love with a glance. Vision shapes memory and imagination. It defines beauty, guides survival, and inspires art. All of this, then every sunset admired, every face recognized, every constellation named, is built upon that ancient miracle of light-sensitive cells evolving toward awareness. If evolution teaches anything through the story of the eye, it is that complexity is not born in an instant. It emerges through patience, through persistence, through the slow accumulation of advantage. Each generation adds a detail, a curve, a refinement. The world of sight we now take for granted is the result of billions of small victories. Cells learning to feel light, organisms learning to move toward it, creatures learning to see, to understand, to dream. The universe began in darkness. Then came light, and somewhere life learned to look back. The first eye to open transformed everything. The ocean no longer hid its secrets. The sky revealed its motion. The world became visible. Every eye since, from the snail's simple photoreceptors to the keen gaze of a hawk, carries that same inheritance. To see is to remember that the world is vast, ancient, and connected. When you look at anything, the shimmer of water, the color of a leaf, the glow of a distant star, you are participating in the same miracle that has been unfolding since the dawn of life. Light enters your eyes, and in that instant, billions of years of evolution come to life inside you. You are not merely observing the world. You are the world seeing itself. And somewhere in the ocean, in a creature with no bones and no voice, Another eye opens, perhaps for the first time. It too perceives light. It too begins to understand. The story continues, endlessly experimenting, endlessly refining, endlessly seeing. Evolution works without a goal. There is no plan, no perfection, and only survival. The story of life is not a march toward greatness, not a ladder leading upward, but a winding path through chance and circumstance. Every living thing, from the smallest microbe to the tallest tree, is a record of what happened to work. Nothing more, nothing less. Random mutations, mistakes in the great copying process of DNA, sometimes give one creature a tiny advantage. That advantage may mean the difference between life and death, between leaving descendants or being forgotten. In this way, the great story of life unfolds, not through purpose but through persistence. Imagine the first molecules of life, floating in a warm sea billions of years ago. They had no thought, no intention. They were patterns repeating themselves as best they could. Sometimes the pattern broke. Sometimes it repeated imperfectly. And yet in those imperfections there was possibility. A slightly different molecule might bind more easily, survive heat a little better, or gather energy more efficiently. That difference meant it would persist a little longer. And so it became the seed for everything that followed. Evolution began not with design, but with error. And with error came change. This is the truth that humbles us. Everything alive today is the result of countless accidents that happened to work. Nature does not aim for beauty, intelligence, or even strength. It aims for nothing at all. It simply favors what continues. The orchid is not designed to be beautiful, but because its shape attracts insects that carry its pollen, beauty remains. The cheetah did not set out to become swift. Swiftness helped it survive. The colors of a butterfly's wings, the song of a bird, the structure of your hand, all are echoes of chance. Randomness, though, is not chaos. It is filtered by time. The world itself is the editor, keeping what endures and discarding what fails. Mutation introduces variation. The environment decides which variations stay. Those decisions are not conscious, not guided, but mechanical. The cold arithmetic of survival. A gene that helps a creature thrive in one age may doom it in another. When the climate shifts, when predators evolve, when food changes, so too does the balance of what works. There is no finish line in evolution, no point at which life becomes complete. Every species alive today is temporary. Even the ones that seem perfect, the shark, the eagle, the oak, are merely well-suited to the present. They are shaped by the moment they inhabit, not by any final design. If the seas rise, if the air warms, if the planet changes, their perfection will crumble. Evolution never stops to admire its work. It simply moves on. It is not progress. It is motion. The forms of life are like waves on the surface of an ocean, each one distinct but all part of the same ceaseless movement. The randomness of mutation means that new possibilities are always being tested. In every birth and every replication of DNA, small errors slip through. Most do nothing, some harm, a few help. Those few ripple through generations, quietly rewriting the story. A thicker fur for colder nights, a longer limb for faster running, a better immune response against an ancient virus. None of it planned, all of it cumulative. Over time, those small advantages build into the patterns we call species. Consider the giraffe. Its long neck seems like the work of purpose, as though evolution wanted it to reach the highest leaves. But no intention guided its growth. There were simply ancient giraffes with slightly longer necks who ate a little better, who survived droughts a little longer, who bore more offspring. Across millions of years, those tiny differences stacked upon one another until the impossible seemed deliberate. Evolution doesn't choose the long neck. It keeps the neck that works. This absence of goal is what makes evolution so powerful. It allows infinite exploration. Where a designer would settle for a single solution, Evolution produces countless variations. It tests everything. Some paths lead to complexity, others to simplicity, some to intelligence, others to extinction. There is no destination, only the endless unfolding of what can survive. That is why life is so diverse, because chance is generous and time is patient. Human beings often resist this idea. We like to believe there is purpose, that our existence was meant to be, but nature is indifferent to meaning. The same process that produced us also produced parasites and viruses, fungi that eat stone, creatures that live in boiling acid. We are not the goal of evolution. We are one experiment among many. The same forces that shaped us will one day shape what comes after. And just as countless species vanished before us, we too will fade, leaving room for something new. And yet, within this randomness there is a strange beauty. Evolution's lack of plan allows for creativity beyond imagination. The spiral of a seashell, the pattern of a leaf, the iridescence of a beetle's wing, all arise from simple rules repeated across time. The appearance of order emerges from disorder, like music from noise. Even intelligence, the self-awareness that allows you to ponder these words, was not intended. It was a side effect, an accident of brain tissue becoming complex enough to reflect upon itself. You are an unintended miracle, a coincidence of chemistry and persistence. Think of the eye again, how it formed not once but many times. Each time, without plan, nature stumbled upon a way to see. The same is true of wings, of lungs, of the ability to walk. Evolution doesn't invent entirely new things. It reuses old parts in new ways. Fish fins become the bones of hands, scales become feathers, jaws become the bones of the human ear. The process is like a craftsman without a blueprint, working only with what's at hand, reshaping, repurposing, refining. There is a quiet lesson here, that perfection is an illusion. Life is not perfect. It is functional. Every creature is a compromise between what was and what is. The human spine, for example, is a relic of walking on four limbs, now forced to carry us upright. It aches because evolution doesn't start over. It modifies. Our eyes have blind spots because of how their wiring developed. Even our minds, capable of reason, are also prone to fear, bias, and error. The remnants of instincts shaped for survival, not truth. Evolution doesn't make what's best. It makes what's enough, and yet enough has built wonders. From those small, sufficient adaptations arose the complexity of the living world. Coral reefs, rainforests, grasslands. Entire ecosystems born from unplanned persistence. The elegance we see in life, the intricate fit between predator and prey, between flower and pollinator, emerges from trial and time, not intent. The bee doesn't understand the flower's shape, nor the flower the bee's vision. But through countless interactions, each has come to depend on the other. Cooperation and balance arise not from foresight but from feedback. Sometimes the same randomness that gives life also takes it away. Catastrophes, volcanic eruptions, asteroids, ice ages, erase millions of species in moments. Evolution doesn't mourn them. It begins again, filling the emptiness with new forms. Extinction is not failure. It is part of the process. If life were a sculptor, its art would be made from destruction as much as creation. Each collapse clears the stage for reinvention. Humans, with our consciousness, struggle against this indifference. We seek reason, destiny, progress. But perhaps there is comfort in knowing that life's continuity doesn't require purpose. The same random, relentless process that shaped the first cell still shapes you.
In your DNA, ancient mutations whisper their legacy. Changes that once protected an ancestor or allowed one more child to live.
You are not the result of a plan. You are the result of survival. And somehow that makes you more extraordinary. Because evolution works without goal, it allows freedom. It permits failure, experimentation, surprise. It allows the improbable to happen. Wings from scales, warmth from cold-bloodedness, thought from instinct. It has no finish line, only variation and adaptation. The bacteria evolving in your gut tonight are continuing the same story that began before time was measured. They mutate, divide, and adapt, not because they must, but because that is what life does. If you trace your lineage back far enough, you find not kings or prophets, but single-celled organisms. They had no vision of you, no knowledge of what they were building, and yet through billions of small survivals, here you are, reading, thinking, dreaming. The unplanned has become aware of itself. The universe, through you, knows it exists. That awareness, too, is a product of randomness. Not inevitable, not destined, just another possibility that happened to work. Perhaps the deepest truth of evolution is humility. It reminds us that we are not separate from the rest of life, not superior, not chosen. We are participants in the same grand experiment, governed by the same rules. The same forces that shaped a blade of grass shaped the human mind. The same trial and error that formed the patterns on a butterfly's wing formed your fingerprints. The difference is scale, not essence. When you look at the natural world, the flight of birds, the motion of fish, the spiral of galaxies, it's easy to imagine a plan. But the plan is ours, not nature's. We see meaning because we create it. The universe simply moves, unfolds, evolves. Life, like water, follows paths of least resistance, filling every niche, every possibility. What persists does so because it fits the moment, not because it was chosen for greatness. And yet, despite its randomness, evolution has produced harmony. The interlocking systems of nature, predator and prey, plant and pollinator, fungus and tree, form a balance that seems intentional. But that balance is emergent, not imposed. It is the sum of countless feedback loops of trial and error spanning eons. It endures because instability cannot. The illusion of design arises naturally when randomness meets time. One day the creatures that exist now will vanish. The forms that dominate will be replaced by others. Perhaps new intelligences will emerge, or perhaps the earth will return to silence. Evolution will not notice. It will continue patient and indifferent, reshaping what remains. Even extinction cannot stop it. It only clears space for what comes next. The story of life has no final chapter, only endless revisions. So when you think of evolution, do not imagine a goal. Think instead of movement, on of endless becoming. Life is a dance between chaos and order, driven by chance, sustained by adaptation. There is no perfection at the end of it, no design waiting to be revealed. There is only the constant reshaping of what works in this moment. That truth may seem cold, but it carries a quiet beauty. Everything alive is temporary, but nothing is wasted. You are part of that motion, a ripple in the great unfolding. Every cell in your body carries the record of change, the fingerprints of ancient mistakes that made life possible. You are made from the improbable, shaped by accidents that endured, and when you pass, your atoms will return to the cycle, to be reused, reshaped, reborn. Evolution does not plan, but it continues. It does not seek meaning, yet it creates it. Through its blind persistence, the world fills with color, sound, and consciousness. From random mutation comes order. From indifference, beauty. Life does not need a goal to be miraculous. It only needs time. And time, it seems, is endless. You are evolution's latest experiment. Every heartbeat, every breath, every thought, a product of millions of generations that learned, changed, and survived. You are not separate from the story of life. You are its newest chapter. Every atom in your body was once part of stars, oceans, and ancient creatures that lived and died long before your name was ever spoken. You carry their victories within you, the silent triumphs of survival that echo across time. Before you took your first breath, before there was even a human species to belong to, the earth was already old. The world teemed with life forms that bore no resemblance to you. The first single-celled organisms pulsed beneath the oceans, dividing and mutating in their microscopic struggle for existence. There was no direction, no awareness, only persistence. Out of that persistence came variation. Some cells learned to harness sunlight. Others found nourishment in the dark. Slowly, over billions of years, these small acts of endurance laid the foundation for everything that would follow, including you. Your blood carries the memory of those oceans. The salt in it is not coincidence. It is a signature of your origins. Your cells divide using the same molecular machinery that guided those first primitive organisms. You are built from recycled blueprints, rewritten and refined by time. Every function in your body, digestion, breathing, reproduction, immunity, is an echo of adaptations that once helped another life form survive. You are a living archive, carrying in your DNA the record of an unbroken chain stretching back 4 billion years. But evolution is not a sculptor working toward perfection. It is an endless experimenter, trying everything, keeping what works, discarding what doesn't. The shape of your hand, the curve of your spine, the way your eyes perceive light, all are results of countless experiments that succeeded just enough to continue. Your lungs exist because ancient fish developed sacs to gulp air when water grew scarce. Your inner ear bones once formed the jaws of reptiles. The architecture of your brain is a layered structure, primitive reflexes buried beneath the newer folds of reason and imagination. Evolution never starts from scratch. It remodels the old to build the new. To understand what you are is to understand that you are not designed, you are discovered. Nature stumbled upon you through trial and error. Your intelligence, your emotions, your ability to love and create art, all of these are outcomes of processes that began with survival. Empathy, cooperation, curiosity. They arose not from divine intention but from their usefulness. Early humans who worked together lived longer. Those who could imagine, plan, and dream had an advantage. The poetry of your mind is built upon the logic of survival. Every thought you have is made possible by a brain shaped by necessity. The neurons that fire when you feel joy evolved to reward behavior that sustained your ancestors. The fear that grips you in danger is the echo of a mechanism that once saved lives. Even your capacity for wonder, the way you look at stars or feel awe at the vastness of existence, may be the side effect of pattern recognition, of brains built to find meaning in chaos. Evolution does not care for poetry, and yet it gave rise to poets. You are an experiment that learned to question its own origins. No other creature on Earth can look at itself and ask why it exists. That ability, fragile and rare, is both your gift and your burden. To know that you are temporary, that your existence is a flicker in time yet still to seek meaning, that is the most human of acts. You are evolution becoming self-aware, life looking back upon itself and wondering what it has done. If you could trace your lineage back, you would find yourself among creatures that barely resemble you. Fish with fins that began to strengthen, reptiles that ventured onto land, small mammals that scurried in the shadows of dinosaurs. You would see 1,000 forms of your ancestors, each one carrying the code of survival, each one a success story written in DNA. You would see creatures that failed, too, the ones whose experiments ended in extinction. Their loss made room for your existence. You are built on both survival and failure. Both are essential to your story. When you breathe, you repeat a motion older than humanity. When you sleep, your brain follows rhythms set long before mammals existed. Even your dreams are shaped by inherited circuits. The mind rehearsing survival, simulating reality. The instincts that once guided your ancestors in the wild still live inside you. They whisper in the background of modern life, in your hunger, your fears, your desires. You are ancient, even as you feel new. Every generation before you made choices that shaped what you are, not consciously but through the slow filtering of what endured. Some fought the cold and evolved thicker skin. Others learned to walk upright, freeing their hands for tools. Your ancestors learned to make fire, to tell stories, to build shelters against the chaos of nature. Each adaptation, physical, mental, cultural, added another layer to what you are now. You are not just a biological being. You are the culmination of countless experiments in behavior, emotion, and thought. Evolution didn't stop with your body. It continues in your culture, your technology, your ideas. Just as genes mutate, so do beliefs and inventions. Ideas compete for survival in the vast ecosystem of human minds. Some vanish, others spread, shape, and evolve. Your capacity to share knowledge and to pass on what you learn is itself an evolutionary triumph. No other species can store experience outside the mind and preserve it across millennia. Books, art, languages, and tools. These are the new DNA of humanity, carrying the essence of your species beyond flesh. But remember, you are not the final product. You are a moment in motion. Evolution is still at work, quietly, invisibly. Even now, as you read these words, mutations are occurring in your cells. Most will do nothing. A few might change everything for someone generations from now. The story continues through you, but it does not end with you. You are both an endpoint and a beginning, the latest expression of life's endless curiosity. There is a strange comfort in this. You were not created by chance alone, but by countless chances that succeeded. Every heartbeat is proof of continuity, the unbroken inheritance of survival. The same pulse that beats in your chest once beat in creatures that crawled through the mud of ancient seas. It is not a metaphor. It is biology. Your veins are rivers carrying the memory of evolution's patience. Think of how many things had to happen exactly as they did for you to exist. The right mutations, the right environments, the right survivals. A single misstep in that chain. A predator that didn't miss, a storm that didn't pass, and your story would never have begun. You are improbability made real. A fragile success against impossible odds. Evolution did not plan you, but every success before you made you possible. You are the continuation of an ancient experiment. And you are still being tested. Your intelligence allows you to alter the course of your own evolution. You can change your environment faster than nature can adapt to it. You can cure diseases that once ended lineages, modify genes, even create artificial life. Evolution for billions of years worked blindly. Now it works through you, its conscious instrument. You are evolution experimenting with awareness, seeing how far life can understand itself. Whether that leads to survival or self-destruction, that too remains part of the experiment. Even your morality, your sense of right and wrong, has evolutionary roots. Cooperation made early human tribes stronger. Empathy allowed parents to care for their young. Altruism helped communities endure. What began as instinct evolved into ethics, religion, and philosophy. The moral frameworks that guide you today are extensions of ancient survival strategies. You are not separate from the animals that came before. You are their refinement, their question mark. When you look at your reflection, you are seeing the face of a species that has carried fire through ice ages, crossed oceans, and walked on the moon. But you are also seeing the face of the same animal that once hunted in forests, that still flinches at sudden movement, that still hungers for connection. Beneath your skin you are ancient. You are filled with the wisdom of survival, written in the silent language of DNA. And yet you are also fragile. Evolution is merciless in its experimentation. It grants no guarantees. The same process that produced you can just as easily erase you. The earth does not promise permanence. It only offers opportunity. Species rise, thrive, and vanish. The dinosaurs once ruled the planet. Now they are gone. Humanity's reign too is temporary, but that does not make it meaningless. It makes it precious. Every breath, every thought, every act of creation is a rare phenomenon in an indifferent universe. If evolution's purpose is to see what life can become, then you are one of its most astonishing results. You can imagine things that do not yet exist. You can shape the world not only for survival but for beauty, for meaning, for love. You are the experiment that dreams. Perhaps that is evolution's newest frontier, consciousness that creates its own purpose. You carry within you the same forces that drive the universe. The carbon in your cells was forged in stars. The water you drink has passed through countless forms, rivers, clouds, creatures. The DNA that builds your body carries the instructions written by time itself. You are not apart from nature. You are its expression, aware of itself for a fleeting moment. You are what happens when the cosmos becomes curious about its own existence. In every breath, in every heartbeat, you are participating in the same rhythm that has pulsed since the beginning of life. The air that fills your lungs once passed through the leaves of ancient forests, through the wings of birds, through the lungs of your ancestors. You are a continuation of that exchange, the dialogue between life and earth that never ends. You are not a mistake. You are the outcome of endurance. Evolution is not a story of perfection, but of persistence, of life refusing to end. The fact that you exist at all means that for billions of years life kept going, no matter how harsh the world became. That tenacity is inside you. When you struggle, when you endure pain or loss, you are echoing the oldest instinct in the universe, to continue. So stand for a moment in silence and feel it, the weight of time within you. You are ancient and new at once. You are built from the triumphs of those who came before, shaped by forces beyond your knowing. Every cell, every breath, every thought is part of something vast and unfinished. You are evolution's latest experiment, not the end of the story, but its current voice. And somewhere far beyond your awareness, the process continues. The same slow, patient experiment that made you will make what comes after. Life will keep changing, learning, reaching. The world will remember your presence not in words, but in the small ways you contribute to the great pattern, a genetic change, a new idea, a kindness passed on. You carry the victories of all who survived before you. You are built from their resilience, their curiosity, their mistakes. You are not separate from them. You are them, continued. And as you move through the world, breathing, thinking, creating, you are still part of the same grand experiment, still unfolding, still alive. You are evolution, dreaming of what comes next.